And we need to do this. We need to get out there and stop traveling around on these huge boats like idiots. Go down, find the trees, plant the trees, and then sit and have a cup of tea under the tree.
Welcome back to Cambridge Forum. This is our new series coming to you live via Zoom. I'm Mary Stack, the Executive Director, and today we are privileged, or should I say blessed, to have the company and wisdom of Diana Beresford-Kroeger, a globally recognized climate activist, scientist, poet, and author, who's going to share with us the soul and science of forests, which she brought together in a new book, Our Green Heart. This book is a culmination of Diana's tireless life work as a botanist, biologist, biochemist, and advocate for the global forest. She delivers a challenge to us all to look more closely, listen more deeply, and physically feel the presence of trees, to fully appreciate the ways they might save us from climate breakdown. And then she delivers a call to action to not only protect the forests, but to plant them. So Diana, Céad Míle Fáilte.
And I add to that, agus go méid tú meo, agus go nairi tú. And I'll give you a translation for it. And may you rise within yourself, and you agus méid tú meo, and may you have great life within you.
I'll try and live up to that. It's wonderful.
Oh, God.
So Diana, you had a very unconventional upbringing, education, I put that in inverted commas. Both of your parents were aristocrats. Your English father saw education as some kind of status symbol, whereas your Irish mother saw knowledge and valued for itself, and to improve the world, both within you and without you, outside of you. So you also were orphaned early, and then you were schooled by your Irish elders in ancient Druidic knowledge and the Brehon law. Now, before I go on and talk about the first-rate science education you got at UC Cork, and then 2 PhDs in the United States and Canada, tell us what Druidic knowledge is and what's the Brehon law?
What are the Brehon laws? Well, the thing is that in Ireland, around the time of Christ and before the time of Christ, Ireland was known as a country of education. The children of kings from all over the Eastern Europe and Spain and France were sent to Ireland as wards. And they would be teenage wards to train them into thinking, philosophy, all kinds of areas of thought that they were put into, and then they were sent back to their families. So my family had been in action since about the 5th century, and the castle that they did all the teaching from was the Castle of Ross in Killarney. And Killarney, when I went to this castle, it was just, they took the roof off the castle because you had to pay taxes if you had a roof on anything. So they took the roof off, and there was just a corner. I am talking honestly now. In the corner, there was a farrowing sow and about 10 bonnets in the sow, all railed in. And I loved the bonnets. And my mother would come along with her cigarette, her woodbine, and she would say, "Oh, Diana, have they not fixed this area up yet?" So that was what I was shown every year. And I knew that behind that there was a huge amount of learning and all kinds of things aus Gaeilge. So I was introduced to that when my parents and everybody died. My mother's family decided that because I wouldn't be getting money because of primogeniture, you heard about that. No, there is no such a thing as a woman being a lord. There's no such a thing as women inheriting titles and so on and so forth. It's changed a little bit now after Princess Di, and I'm related to her too, by the way. So what they decided to do, 22 women, they were all in their 1880s and 90s. They had Latin and Greek, but they were teaching me aus Gaeilge in Irish. And so I was brought every day and taught for about 4 years all of the the body, mind, and soul. The protection of body, mind, and soul, what you do, meditation, string, it's a string a system of telepathy where you do a concentration on somebody and it gives you some protection. I could talk about that. It's very interesting phenomenon. And then medicines, all the medicines of the forest, the medicines of Anfánias. Mary, you would have seen the Fánias in Ireland, the great big huge circles, and they were the old areas of the Druidic culture. But let me explain about Druids for once and for all. An Druid a Drake in Gaelic means the people who practice magic. And if you did not know about a television or a radio and you went into a farmer's field and put a radio down and started it up and you had voices coming from the radio, you think, oh my God, we're being visited by gods. So the ordinary people who were not that advanced in their education thought the Druids were an Druid a Drake. And actually their names, their proper names were Aluna. Alune, Aluna. The Aluna is the equivalent of professors. And they took 17 years worth of education to be a doctor, to be a physician, to be a lawyer, to be a songwriter, to be a musician, the whole thing. So it was a very educated kind of culture that Ireland had. And we've all been told that we're idiots. We've all been told that the Irish are no good. But actually there was a line breeding into the different inheritances within Ireland. If you were a good writer, you were married into a good writer family. And that marriage, that alone gave us the ability to produce presidents of the United States. Because they all have blood. Even Obama has an 8th degree cousin in Ireland that went galloping up to see. So, I mean, there you go.
So you had all this schooling in the woods in the summertime and the fields, and then you were also very bright. So you went on to university and you ended up studying botany, medical biochemistry, and organic chemistry. Mm-hmm. And it eventually served to reinforce the belief you had of the enduring wisdom of your ancestors. And you actually left academia at the age of 38. So you'd had enough of it.
Yeah. Mary, I hadn't realized a couple of things. I hadn't realized that I had a free movement through academia. I was doing second year engineering mathematics when I was 14. And the nuns pushed me in, had professors come from the university to tutor me. And so I kind of rocketed through university. I rocketed through the system, not even really thinking about it, because I had a curfew on me until I was 21 by the courts, because the judge in the courts was afraid to put me into a Magdalen laundry where I was supposed to go as punishment.
Because you were an orphan.
I was an orphan.
Right.
Yeah, and until I was 21, I had to be in at 10 o'clock at night, according to the courts. So I was kind of really well behaved. So I did nothing but study. And I was told by my mother's people when they were finished with me, they thought I was educated at the age of 16. They told me I was to go to university and study every single subject that I possibly could. And they told me at the time of now, and this is the time of the big lies. That's what I was told. This is the time of the big lies, that old wisdom, ancient wisdom had to be knitted together with the knowledge we have to make a foundation of certainty and thinking for the population of the world right now. And I didn't believe it. I thought, wow, this is crap. I mean, like every teenager would think that. So I hit the library and the medical library, and I have a seat in the medical library. And actually, I got an award last November, and they have the library open for me, my seat in the library, where I used to sit and test out all of the treatments and all of the cures that I was taught. And actually, they're all right. They're all correct.
You mean the ancient wisdom was verified by your scientific training, is what you're saying? By
scientific training. And when I was about 38 years old, I realized, I didn't see it. I wasn't aware of it. I realized women were being abused. we were taken into academia, and I heard a lot of nasty things about women, and none of these things were true. Some of the stuff I endured myself. I was doing surgery, and the gentleman that I had requested to assist me in surgery, I'm giving you an example, he was English. And he said to the Dean of Medicine, he said, I will not take instruction from an Irish woman who is more educated than I am. He refused actually to do some of the surgery that I had requested. And so that kind of thing tumbled over and over and over again. And I thought, no, I have more ideas. I am interested in research. The research I wanted to do, I could not do it within a university because I believe in Renaissance. I believe that all people are equal, that we're all good enough to matter within society. And I would have a shot at doing it myself. And hence, buying the land, hence having this huge arboretum. I saw that in the arboretum was very important because none of the trees that were the indigenous trees of North America were being saved. So I started saving them, and then the more I did that, the more I saw, my goodness, some of these trees are very difficult to propagate, and I have to propagate them for climate change. So then we turn to something else that's very important here in all of North America, the US, Canada, and the rest of the world, are the ancient trees. The ancient description of trees has never been done. Nobody understands how the complex of trees conducts their business of carbon sequestration out of the air and oxygenation of the whole planet.
Where do you think oxygen comes? Right? Transpiration.
And transpiration, exactly. Nobody has asked that question. Our oxygen levels are going down concomitantly as the carbon dioxide are going up. And if they go down too far, your daughter will not be able to carry a baby in utero for 37 weeks. You will go to 40, 41, 42. We are not built that way. So we've got to get cracking, and we've got to stop this thing. And by the way, the ancient trees have a living library within them. So you have enormous trees. I measured one tree out in California where I was doing genetic studies, and it's 55 feet in full circumference. And they had it as a dance stage. And that tree had all of the library for the last 4,500 years running right through it. Last year was bad. The year before that was good. The spring was very good. You can read, we had a meteor at a certain time hit the rock, hit the planet, the rocks of the planet, and you can actually see it through the tree. So the tree knows how to endure. And we need to have that grandparent and great grandparent within the family, human family, to enable us to actually go into the future.
So, Diana, you write with great beauty, poetically, with respect about forests, and you speak of your own intimate relationship with trees. How is it that so many cultures have lost this understanding, and yet some developed countries, and I'm thinking of Germany and Japan in particular, have made a priority of sustainable forest management? Can you explain how we lost our way, the rest of us?
Yeah, well, Germany was part of the Celtic culture. Germany is Teutonic, on Tuatónich in Gaelic, in Old Gaelic, is the people of Tónich in Old Gaelic. And they have got tree stamped into their soul for some reason. But the Celtic culture went from Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales down into France and Spain, then up into the Baltic countries, down into the tip of Africa and across into the Galatian area of Turkey, then into the Ukraine. Ukraine have red-headed people, and then on into the central part of Asia Minor where they brought the tartans. So we were colossal, impressive force once upon a time. I mean, it's kind of gone now. I mean, everything has a cycle, but we.
But back to their protection of trees, they preserved it for some reason. The Germans.
The Germans did, okay, because they were Teutonic,
Mhm.
and the Japanese because of the Shinto religion. The
Mm.
Shinto religion is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, if you were to expose yourself to that, it's even deeper than Buddhism. And the head of the Shinto religion brought me up to the top of Mount Kurama, and he asked me what did I wish for. And we went way, way up to the top before dawn, and he had all his robes with him. And what we did, I said, I want to pray with you for world peace. And it was the most extraordinary experience, mystical experience of my life. I can't go into it, but some of you listeners, holy cow, I mean, it was just really something else. I had knowledge of backwards into Japan. No, I am not crazy. And he took my hands in his hands and he said, you strong spirit. Oh, yeah, by God, that was something else again. For an Irish woman, that is, you know.
So, about the way that you react and interact with trees. Tell me
Mhm,
what it is you have sensed since you were a child when
mhm.
you are in the presence of trees.
Yeah, yeah.
You get the sentience of this living system.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I have had a lot of different experience with trees, and actually, the Aboriginal people here too have, and then the medicine men and medicine women have. But I'll just talk about one reaction and interaction I had in Japan. It was the sacred day of the Cryptomeria japonica. Cryptomeria japonica is actually in Japan and all over the world. It is actually an anti-cancer tree. It's their medicinal tree, their primary sacred tree of the Shinto people. And I had the feeling that the sacred tree, which was just being honored prior to my being there, and we were doing the photography of it, I asked if I could have privacy with the tree. And all of the crew, the film crew, stayed aside, and the Shinto people, the monks, all stayed aside. And all I can say is that I climbed up this area, and this tree was absolutely colossal. And I put my arms around the tree. I I went into silence on the tree. I went into antosht in Gaelic, which is that virtual absolute silence. And I went my spirit went into an out of body experience into the tree. And the tree said to me, I called you here. I called you here across the oceans to be here. And I went into an immense, huge silence within that tree. I can't explain it. I've got all these bloody degrees. I cannot explain it. And I came out from that knowing that I was on the right footpath. I was taking instruction from that sacred tree. I came down and I was freezing, freezing cold. And they had to put coats around me to warm me up. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. But that's one experience that I had. I I can't give you an answer for it. I mean, describing it. It was instructional and extraordinary.
So do you
And
think,
the head of the Shinto religion, the chief man and the Shinto, did not laugh at me. He didn't say, "Oh, these crazy Irish women floating in here." No, they did not. And did they say, "Are you drunk?" No, I am not. So, no, 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 no.
okay, we've got a question that's just come in from somebody saying, I traveled in Germany last summer. I saw many dying industrial forests. The nature guide said the Germans are uncomfortable with the untidiness of natural forests. It
Mhm.
wasn't what I expected. Can you comment?
Yes, I can comment. Right now, I'll comment. As I'm commenting, there is a fire on in Portugal, and the Germans came in. We have two foresters here for this area, they have 400. And the person in charge of that is Dr. Silke Lenninger. She is one smart lady. So, what they do is all the debris fall from the trees and they crush it. And if you crush and put the debris in the ground and then work it into the ground, then what happens is there are no flash fires. It stops the the fires. It decreases the resin content, resonant resin content
Content.
of the ground, the mycelium in the ground, and it stops the flash firing happening. Flash fires happen, this is a big problem, happens when we go take up the temperatures up to 48 degrees. It's a cold cup or closed cup experiment in physics. You take resin from the resin of trees, put it in, and jack up the temperature to 48 degrees, and it flash fires. So the Germans are very smart. They are keeping the flash fires down, and that's why they're doing it.
So let's talk a bit about trees themselves, and how they became a commodity rather than a living entity for an enormous number of economies.
Yeah.
And we've acted generally as though there's a bottomless supply of timber and other natural resources, the fish in the ocean, clean air. But now we know this is finite. It's all running out.
Yeah.
So we're at quite a late hour in terms of saving our planet. So what's your advice if you had to give a piece of advice to us?
My advice to everybody who's listening to this, and I'm asking you to be my ambassadors, not for myself, for you and for your children and your whole family. I'm asking you to take me seriously. It is the bioplan, and what it is, it's the global bioplan. And by the way, while I'm talking about this, is Professor E.O. Wilson was my wonderful patron all of my life, really, while I was in North America. And he considered my ideas, concepts of bioplan to be extraordinarily important. So this is really important. I'm seriously telling you to plant one tree per person for the next 6 years. Then we're up in the region of adding to our great forests 48 or so billion trees, because more people are doing more than 5 and 6. They're doing a lot more. So that's 48 billion trees. We have the sequestration of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Trees farm the sun. They are the farmers of the sun. And the petioles, like lamina, move towards the sun and track the sun during the day. And the straight lamina now. Let me tell you something about Einstein. Einstein puffed away in Princeton. Like, look, he loved nature, by the way. He puffed and looked up into the trees. At the same time, he had 2 sets of experiments on light, one vector, one wavelength. The vector, he knew the wavelength was a sine wave. It's a special kind of sine wave you see in the oceans. That'll give you the better idea of that. He didn't know what they were doing. Well, the sine wave, now we know, lands on the lamina of the leaf. This is the actual farming that takes place in the leaf. You have the cuticle, goes through the cuticle. It's a window. Underneath that, you have the mesophyll layer, which is packed with green. And this light, this soft light, goes into the green part of the mesophyll, into the chlorophyll, hops on the chlorophyll, and you get a displacement of 1 electron for 1 photon, quantum lifting, quantum there. And that fires the whole planet. The carbon is broken in half, oxygen into your lungs, la la la. You can breathe, you're wonderful. Carbon into the body of the skeleton of the tree. That makes the soil. That makes us able to grow vegetables in the soil, humic acid in the soil from the leaves, then goes out into the oceans. And in the oceans, it grabs iron from the land. The land is rich in iron and poor. The sea is poor in iron. And the humic acid, fulvic acid, goes out into the ocean, releases the iron. The iron is a catalyst for nitrogenase enzymes. So protein building, you get big forests in the ocean, Crococalis, Camasiphinalis, Nosticalis, and all these species in the open water double up. There's your feeding foundation of the ocean. That's where your fish come in to feed. That's where your whales come in. So it's all connected. So if you have, like in California, which they have had terrible fires, there's drought on the land and the fish are starving. So in Japan, there's an Mary, you and I would know them as a shanfakel, an old word of great wisdom that floats down the centuries to us. A shanfakel is an old word, old wisdom carried by people. The shanfakel in Japan is to catch a fish, you plant a tree. And all the fishermen there are planting trees all around the island. And they're so busy doing it, they wouldn't give us the right to do a bit of photography on them, but they're doing it.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. So can you explain, Diana,
Yeah.
what's the difference now? I should mention in the documentary, the brilliant
Yeah.
documentary that everybody should watch, we've got a link in it in the chat here if everybody looks. The documentary, you actually have mapped out North America
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
by geographic zone, if you
Yes.
don't know what should be native to where you live,
Yes.
and why would we, it tells you in English and in Latin the classification of the trees you should be planting in your particular area. And the documentary is outstanding, and it's called Call of the Forest. And
Yeah.
you can get it on Amazon. You can rent it on Amazon. So watch it, get that information. You can download the app, and that will be a starting point for telling you what trees you need to
Yeah.
put. Now, in explaining that, what is the difference, Diana, between this plantation, as you refer to, or a cash crop, as opposed to native forest? What's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm going to bring you to Ireland because, or anywhere in North America, really, I can bring you by the hand into the forest. We're going to go into a forest now. This is a forest, a native forest. You and I will trot in and we'll bring a picnic with us. You look up around the trees. There are stringers up the trees, maybe all different kinds of climbing species up the trees. And on the ground, you'll have all kinds of plants. You have mushrooms that come up at this time of the year. You have all kinds of ferns. A fern gives you an indication of the age of the forest itself. There are all kinds of sub-layers under the forest. And you have also tubular material, the plant material in the ground. Then you have birds up there. You have small trees and larger trees and very huge trees. And the huge trees produce a kind of an echo that the songbirds mimic, and then they become strong in reproduction. They go up into those trees and they preen themselves, and they're in this glorious forest, in their lichens on the trees, and they wave. They produce arsenic acid into the air, and you have a cleansing of the air that you're going into. And some species that are there, like for instance, all the pines. Now we're talking about all the Pinaceae families. You go in, they produce alpha and beta pinene by forest bathing into your lungs, lower lungs, protects you to cancer for 1 week, for 1 year, 1 month. And every month you do it, you get a protection from cancer. You get the kids in there, get them to rub their hands on cones and so on and so forth. Pine cones I'm talking about. It protects you to flesh-eating diseases, right? So there. Then in a plantation, you go in, the trees are all the same height. If you have storms, like we're having storms right now, or rivers out of the sky, just like everybody is having right now, too much hydration in the air, bang, they come down. Every single one, they're like a stack of cards. Bang, bang, bang,
So
bang,
it's
bang,
a
bang.
monoculture.
It's a monoculture. It's a
Okay.
plantation and a monoculture. And very few plantations have a whole series of trees. You will never find all of the rare ferns in there, the isoetes in there, all of the different species of, like in Ireland, the hymenophyllum. I found hymenophyllum, the cloud fern in Killarney, in the Killarney area. So one of them is like it's like a desert. And it's only grown to produce wood, certain kinds of wood, maybe for pulping or so on and so forth. The other is a life system for the planet.
Okay, and that's what we're lacking. So that
Yep.
was moving me on now to this very important thing that we can't emphasize enough, the boreal forest, which you say is the last great working forest in the world. It's
Yes.
30,000 years old.
Yes.
And you say once it's gone, it's gone. It's irreplaceable. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about the size and the significance of that? Because it's a crown along the
Yeah.
whole top of the world. And
Yeah,
then,
if you like you look at my head and pretend I'm a monk, that's a bit difficult, I know. But all across it, it's a band, a huge band around the top of the globe. And actually, very few people know it's even there. In Russia, they don't call it the boreal forest, they call it the taiga. And it's in northern China, it's in northern Japan, as a matter of fact. And the Sakhalin Islands are a great area. The product of the boreal forest goes down into the Sakhalin Islands. That's where the great whales give birth and protect their what would you call them, their calves in the Sakhalin Islands, because it's super oxygenated. The young whales do extremely well in the water, and that's one byproduct from there. But then the whole of the area has got these modified trees, and they're for Ireland and England and Scotland and so on and so forth. They're the Pinus sylvensis, the Scots pine. The Scots pine in the taiga grows to be a huge, monstrous tree in minus 60 degrees. It's an unbelievable phenomenon that happens there. Then the equivalent pine on our side of the world, the North American side of the world, is Pinus banksiana. Now, let me tell you about these. The angle of the sun, you see, there's my head. There's my head. The angle of the sun comes in as a slope. All the trees are modified to actually act and photosynthesize with that sloping line of light coming in. It doesn't come in like the tropics, boing, 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 boing. It comes in all around the top of the boreal forest, and it's modified. The chlorophyll is modified to actually enact that. And then underground, you have very little mycelia in the ground. It's above ground. And so on top of that, you have this huge banquet of lichens that are on the ground, but they produce ursolic acid. They do a protection for the forest themselves. There are all kinds of species and all kinds of slime molds, really greasy slime molds in the water in the area around that. And those slime molds kind of creep everywhere. And we don't understand them. We don't even know what they do. And the boreal forest has got species in it like the great eagles, like all of the owls. It is the banquet area that the birds from the south along the tropics, they migrate up north and they get fed, and then they lay their eggs, and then they come down. Some of them lay their eggs, some of them come down to the south too. You would not have the great birds of the world without the boreal forest. And all of the species of bats that go up and come down, and the animals that start the migration, the great migration in the world, in the waterways, benefit from that also. So it's a win-win situation. And the depth of mosses there can go down many, many meters. And it is a soaking area, it's a hydrating area for the world itself. Plus, you have the species up there, the balsam poplars. All of the Populaceae family are up there, and they produce in the spring this huge plume of chemistry all around the globe. And let me tell you what that chemistry does. For the ladies in the world, it is a form of oxytocin. It helps you to give birth easily. For the gentlemen, it promotes your sexual activities. Then it helps to drop the blood pressure. It changes the pressure in the optic nerve in the eye. It does all kinds of things for you. And what it does today, please listen today to this. It changes the periphery of the venous system into your nose. So what it does for you, it closes down your nose a bit and it protects you to COVID-19.
wow. So all these antibacterial, anti-inflammatory.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
It's a
You got that.
medicinal cabinet.
It is a medicine. Yeah, that's right. I hadn't thought of that. It's let loose on the world.
Right, right.
And it helps all the mammals. I mean, it's not just us. We're the two-legged ones, but it's for all the four-legged ones too.
So the importance of planting the native trees is that this creates biodiversity, and that
Exactly.
obviously translates to health.
You got it.
So it
Exactly.
seems like a pretty simple equation if you're paying attention, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also, in your respect for your trees, say in the book that forests are the banks of nature. And every time we take a breath, we should thank a tree, which is a
Yes.
beautiful thought.
Yes.
What do you mean by, and we've talked about their medicinal purpose. What about all the other things they do as
Banking.
banks of nature?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
banking the carbon.
Now, you put, it used to be before, your family would put gold away. Actually, you're Irish, so first off, you'd have put silver away because silver was the favorite Irish. Let's go to our Irish stuff. And then after that, there's gold. Gold ornamentation was fantastic. That's your banking system. It's the banking system in India. It's been the banking system for a very long time. But nature produces a different kind of banking system. They use carbon in a great cycle which goes all around the world. All the growth, the land mass, the green mass, the biomass of the whole planet makes it a living planet. And the biomass carries carbon. And its carbon can actually function in many, many ways. It can lose its oxygen in oxidation reduction reactions. Pop, you've got your oxygen. Thank a tree because it's oxygenating you today. And one tree is needed per one person, a big, big tree, to keep you in focus for breathing oxygen. So we need a lot more trees. If we start expanding our population, we start expanding our forests. But why there has been this price point on trees? It started with the Romans, and the Romans had really the run of everything except for Ireland. They never got into Ireland, but everything got reduced to money because they had to pay for the expansive legions that were going into the countries all over the world. It became very expensive for them, and then they had the regulations, and that was the downfall of Rome, really. But we picked it up. In some countries, they don't do that. Some countries, they do respect the trees. But tell me what country doesn't respect money? There is a love for money that is really ridiculous right now. So George Bernard Shaw, I think, said, be rich in what you don't want. That's what we need right now. Be rich in what you don't want. So back off this having 5 cars or 10 cars in a holiday, 5 holidays all over the world. You don't need to do that. Will you look at your own doorstep and look at your neighbors and find them interesting and get a cat or get a dog or get a donkey? I love donkeys. Get something to look after, get some friends around, have a bit of a giggle, do what they did in Ireland, go to the pubs, and you don't have to drink. You can go in and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something. Go into the pub, have fun with people. They are extraordinary. They're doing marvelous things. Just shut down for a time being, a little bit, so we know we can gather our brains to find out an answer to this, because it may not be just the trees. There may be something else that I think might be important. We also can pull the carbon dioxide out of the air using the solar heat of the sun, which goes over 1,000 degrees centigrade, and we can bind, just like there is your carbon molecule there. It looks like my pearls. It binds together in exactly the same way, and we can find out how much carbon from the atmosphere we can use and put into a car. My God, it's not difficult. We have quantum computers coming online. For crying out loud, this is a very easy thing to do if you have a quantum computer. So I'm not saying that they're the greatest things, but we can register every atom of carbon with a quantum computer. So just hang in there, do what you have to do the bioplan, and we should be smiling for the next couple of hundred years.
Right. Wow. I'm glad to keep this optimistic because I'm now going to get pessimistic on you for a minute. Right now, large parts of Brazil, as you know, which holds 1/10 of the world's fresh water, is on fire, and there's actually black rain falling in several cities.
Yeah,
So you say in the book, the collapse of the Amazon rainforest would release 20 years worth of global carbon emissions into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
what would happen then if that happened?
We would have trouble. Well, actually, it would happen even before 20 years. First off, we've got to stop shooting the people who are protecting the beginnings of the river. And I know quite a lot of women have lost their lives protecting that river. I think we should wakey wakey in Canada, we should wakey wakey in the United States, and we should wakey wakey in Europe, and give maybe some. I've said this actually 20 years ago. Put some monies into Brazil to protect what is in Brazil, because it is benefiting us also. It's not just benefiting Brazil. Stop taking down the forest, and all of you who are eating soya products, would you make sure you don't eat soya products that come from Brazil? I mean, it's very simple. Stop doing it, and all this ridiculous stuff of being fussy about what quality of soya you need. We need to have Brazil functional. We need the rivers functional. We need the dampness functional. We need to have that, and we have to stop firing that area. I mean, if you go into New York and somebody came in with a huge torch and started firing all of New York, don't you think they'd be a little bit of upset about that? But we're doing that. We're standing aside and we're allowing it to happen in Brazil. They need help. A lot of these countries need help. What's wrong with us helping them? There's nothing wrong with us helping them. So we should be doing that, as a matter of fact, in my opinion. So end of that story. That's why we have ambassadors.
So let me go to where you are now, Diana, because we didn't actually tell people that you now live in Canada. Yes. And you live on, I don't know how many 100 acres. And okay, tell me what you are doing there, and how is it different from, say, the seed bank that they have in Kew Gardens in London, where they're collecting the seeds of the world in a bank. And they're also doing something similar in Norway or Sweden.
It's Norway, actually, and climate change is starting to affect them. They don't have full, they need to have 2 or 3 more million seeds in there. What I'm doing, I have a bucket list, and I have one more species to go on the bucket list, and it's called Carya tomentosa. Long ago in the North American, you look at the continent as a great face, look at it as a turtle island, it doesn't really matter what way you look at it. The people grew savannas, and the savanna were oak savannas, hickory savannas, savannas of nut trees, and they flash burned the area. And we're talking about all of the Aboriginal people were involved in this. They flash burned it in April and in November, when the ground was very, very dry, and it ran across just all the debris at the top and produced potassium hydroxide from the ashes. And that potassium hydroxide actually made these trees go absolutely monstrous, and they're nut-bearing trees. The nuts from these trees have oleic, linoleic, and linolenic acid in the nuts for brain repair, for heart repair, major organ repair, for transportation in the body. And these people were never sick. They never had Parkinson's. They had never had brain diseases of any shape, manner, or form, or memory diseases. So that is how they lived. But I found that, let's say, the cucumber tree, Magnolia cuminata, which is the only magnolia extant in Canada, there I have one, possibly more, because I've been propagating it. I think there's about 3 or 4 or 5 of those trees left. That's it. That is it. So I have that in the garden. I have another tree, which I think is really, I've gone out for the last maybe 25, 30 years, going all over the countryside, trying to find, with a criterion for health, trees that are important to climate change. And I've been doing that for a very long time. I get the trees, I propagate the trees, I do it sterilely, like in an operating theatre, bring them in. There's never soil brought in with them. They're all from seed base, and I grow the trees then. What I'm also doing right now, I've got the king nuts growing, and the king nuts, I managed to get 5 more king nuts from a different area of the country. It's taken me 25 years to find them, one tree, and I want to cross breed those trees And then I have a tree that can withstand climate change. I've done this to pear trees. I've done this to apple trees. I've done this to food trees. And so I have a huge garden. It's a living garden. It is a research garden, and I am looking at how they get propagated. Like I have the chestnut tree, the American chestnut. When I am happy with that chestnut, it cropped off a lot of nuts on it this year. This will go back aseptically down to the south. Now, the southern trees on the continent cannot grow north because their solar requirements are so high. But all of the northern trees can go down to the south and expand that solar condition. So the research garden is very, very important. And that's not the only thing I have. I have a North American medicine walk, and I also have the beans that the Aboriginal people used to use as one of the three sisters. I have the beans, and I've been propagating them for about 40 years. Because I think if I don't do that, they'll all get lost.
So this is kind of remarkable work. So I'm amazed that some millionaire hasn't said, I'm going to fund you, Diana, because this is the most important work in the world. Some
Yes,
of
it
these
is.
trees, you're down to the last handful of them in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I had talked 2 months ago to a hedge fund manager. He owns 7 hedge funds. And I told him what I was doing, and he was very excited about it. And then I told him, what is needed now? And he said, oh, well, I might lose money on it. So he wasn't interested. I said to him, this is not about money. This is about lives. This is about your child's life, your grandchildren's life, not mine. So forget the idea of money. I just I need to have certain things, and if it doesn't happen, I will not have a hemorrhage about it because I have really tried, and it needs to be done. And one of them, Petilia trifoliata crucidifolia, was the synergistic medicine of all of the First Nations from Canada down into Florida. And that tree got lost. And I was hung out of a helicopter on Glass Mountains down in Texas. For 4 days, I crossed over 200 areas, crisscrossed 200, and I found the tree. I found the one tree, Petilia trifoliata crucidifolia. I said to the pilot, I said, let me down, let me down, let me down. And I was wearing a pair of trousers, a thick pair of trousers, because I'm frightened of snakes. Look, they scare me. And I forgot the fright of the snakes. I went running over to the tree and threw my arms around the tree, and I started crying. I said, I found it. I found the tree. And what I found is got like little saucers of seeds on the trees, and it was early in the morning, had dampness on the seeds, and they glistened in the sun. That's how I found it. I saw this ocean of seeds, and I said, let me down, let me down. And now it's under arm guard. That tree is under arm guard. It's one last tree. But let me tell you about the tree. It's a synergistic tree. It's synergistic medicine. The medicine men knew about this tree. They'd used it for a very long period of time. You take one aspirin, it becomes 100 aspirin. You take one shot of chemotherapy, by God, it becomes 100 shots. So there are only about 5 synergistic plants in the globe, really, and ginseng is one of them, and our old ginseng is almost gone. So the proper ginseng is almost gone. So this is number 2. I mean, we need to do this. We need to get out there and stop traveling around on these huge boats like idiots. Go down, find the trees, plant the trees, and then sit and have a cup of tea under the tree. Sure, now there you go.
Oh, I like that reward. I like the reward for the hard work. That's very nice. So we've got have a drink there. I'm worried about you losing your voice. I'm getting you to talk so
Yeah,
much.
well, it's my own well water,
Oh,
and
good.
so I'm suspicious of chlorine in all the water. So no, it is not booze. It's not alcohol. It's just water.
I believe you. Millions wouldn't.
Thousands wouldn't.
Okay, we've got a couple of small little questions that have popped in here.
Yeah.
One person's just asked for clarification. They said, what are the products we should stop using from Brazil?
Oh,
Were you saying soy from Brazil?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we
Soy.
should not. I mean,
Soy
having
from Brazil.
soy, yeah, soya. I mean, we they have cattle in the area where there should be trees growing, oxygenating the whole planet. I mean, even children in kindergartens knows that trees are the lungs of the planet. And indeed, they are the lungs of the planet. Our little sausages of grandchildren, they can tell us that with the full authority of their 5-year-old age and tell us that, and yet we ignore it.
Somebody said, just an interesting anecdote, indigenous Alaskans bury fish carcasses at the base of their trees. They're assuming this assists greatly with the nutrient cycling.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I'll
Incredible.
tell you why, because the bones in the fish last as a fertilizer for 25 years.
Wow.
Oh,
Impressive.
they know what they're doing.
Okay, I've got, you've said something I have to ask you about. In one
Yeah.
of the books, you said, I'm struck by a renewed feeling of urgency around something that science has certainly missed. What do you
Oh,
mean by that?
yeah. Yeah. You know, we have potable water. God, this is really important. There are 5 major aquifers, huge aquifers on the planet, and they're going down. Believe it or not, we're losing our water, right? And we look at the trees. The trees are actual molecular machines to manage water. Now, there's no physicist on this planet will understand how water can travel up 400 feet into the air and then get transpired out of the air. And in that, we have the production of distilled, maybe double distilled water, perfectly clear water, clean water. And this is what the redwoods do to California. And we've got that. We've got genetic knowledge we don't know. The genome of a tree is very, very like the human genome, except for 2 bases. We don't know all of these things, and nobody is paying attention to this. It's quite extraordinary. It's to me, it's and you know, it's I
That is.
refused a mastership. I refused to be a professor of medicine because I couldn't cross all these borders and do a Renaissance thinking in medicine, pull people in, and have a clearing of cancer out of the systems of many situations, and wouldn't be allowed to do it. I can't be fired now. I can talk to you, and I can give my ideas out to the public, and they can be multiplied everywhere. I'm not being fired. So this question lies in the great forests, lies in many of the things of the great forests. And actually, there are a number of people who've studied the aerosols from trees and the importance of it. And
Mm.
there's about 19 systems looking at that. MIT is one of them, and Michael Lane is another one, who's a tremendous physicist who's working in cloud chambers, proving all kinds of things about trees that we never knew about. And that these aerosols act as an umbrella system on the planet. We never knew that. And it cools
And
down
there
the
is the
planet.
sting of it, Diana. You've summed it up. We are destroying what we don't even understand yet,
Yeah,
which is a sin, the whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Okay, I've just got to say an observation. Oh, someone's asked what the name of the synergistic tree was that you were referring to that was
Oh,
so
sorry.
important.
Okay.
Sorry.
The family name is Rutaceae, Rutaceae. It's the lemon and grapefruit family. And the name is Petalea, Ptelea, trifoliata, Trifoliata, Chrysиdifolia.
Oh,
CRI is the thicker version leaves. Chrysиdifolia. Ah, sure, it is simple. It's just like Irish.
so this is just anecdotal, but I think it's kind of important, really, talking about destroying what you don't know. One of the things when I first came to America, I was kind of
Yeah.
shocked about was how
Mhm.
people referred to soil and earth
It's
as
dirt.
dirt.
Oh, I don't
I
like
had never
that.
heard that in Europe in my life. It's
Yeah,
something so fundamental and valuable and
yeah,
alive was
yeah,
relegated to something you'd empty
dirt.
out of your dustbin.
Yeah.
How do we change the way that people think about the living environment with a renewed respect, without this disposable mentality? And I see in the film, the call of your in your film,
Yeah,
we see Indigenous children being taken into the territories where they live to
yeah,
be
yeah,
educated about the forest. So where do we begin with that process of education?
We begin with that process by getting some of our kids into forest schools. In Ireland, Mary, you would know this, the old schools were called on Scoilgear, and that the edge schools on the edge in Gaelic. And what happened, we had 500 years worth of penal laws in Ireland, and the children were beaten to a pulp for speaking English, or for speaking Irish. They were supposed to
Imposed
go
by the
to
British. You must explain this. This was a
never mind.
British idea.
What? Say that again.
Imposed by the British on the
It's
Irish.
imposed by the British on the Irish. It's
Right.
500 years worth of torture, essentially. And so the children have to be taught the respect for nature. They have to be brought into the great forests. And the forest schools, which was equivalent on Scoilgear, the forest schools are phenomenal. I've been involved in getting some money for these kiddies. And those kids, they're just little sausages. I was invited as a guest to one of these schools by the kids, and I came in and they made bannocks for me. They lit the fire. These are 5-year-olds. They lit the fire and they all walked around me, wanted to see whether I'd eat their bannocks, which I did. Those kids have leadership, they have empathy, they have compassion, and they respect nature. So get your little sausages into the forest and get them because they will just simply love it. I've taken kids out, I'm called the bush woman, out into the forest, and I've said, what would the dinosaurs eat? The whole school had a breakdown, sit down. The whole school had a sit down until the bush lady brought them through the forest, showed them how to show what the dinosaurs ate and how they ate their medicine. My God, the kids were just absolutely blown away. Do that. It's easy to do. Read them stories. I mean, get them going. The kids need you. They need the grandparents. They need all the parents and people around to get them moving, get them excited, not looking at my iPhone and destroying their eyes. Not doing that. Get them out there. Yeah.
And also get them to plant things so they know that how things grow.
Oh, let me tell you, in Japan, all the kids have to plant their own rice dinner, and they're all given little kind of buckets and spraying cans, and they all every year they have to grow the rice, to drying the rice, to making their dinner. It gives you respect to food. Yep.
So one thing that, again, that was in the book, I know we're running out of time, but this was quite important, I thought.
This is fast.
was the Celtic people and the indigenous people of North America. A lot of their wisdom overlaps, and they both place enormous value on the land for itself alone.
Yeah.
They understand that the pristine boreal forest creates this healthy ecosystem.
Yes.
And in your documentary, one of the tribal members said, be grounded in the wisdom of the land, fight for its protection. And it just it echoed of what you're saying.
Yeah.
It echoed that they fought not to have these areas developed,
yes, and to save them. And they suffered a lot of poverty to do this. And I really, let me tell you, that is to save Pimachuanaki. It's the same size as Norway. And we had some scientists to come in. They asked me to help, of course, I did. Some scientists wanted payment for the rice, the rice that was the wild rice that was in the water. And so he wanted to be paid. And I said, to hell with this. I'll come in, I'll do all the sectioning on rice, I'll do all that and do the scientific description of your forest, which is 5,000 years old, that they know about. So they got their heritage status. And I'll tell you, when I was going across Lake Winnipeg, a weird thing happened, and it really did happen. I have witnesses to this. I was escorted by 6 golden eagles into the area, 6 golden eagles. Oh my God, I was thrilled. I was terrified, like they've got big claws and so on and so forth, and big, huge, beaks. 6 eagles. So we did the right thing. And that's Pimachuanaki. It's the most wonderful place in the world, and the people are fantastic.
So that's now a UNESCO heritage site?
It is now a UNESCO heritage site for the whole world, protected forever. And the Brehon laws, this is another little tidbit for the Brehon laws. The Brehon laws have to each cow a calf, copyright. they cover copyright, and they're precedent laws before the Magna Carta, right? So now in Ireland, they're dragging all these apart, and maybe a forest can be named a person in law, and a river can be named a person in law, so we can protect them. And I've got sneaky poo lawyers coming up to me in 3 weeks' time, and we're going to start examining that. And they're from Washington, and they're really top-notch lawyers. We're going to have a look at this.
Well, I don't know, Diana, how you have the energy and the range of memory for the vast quantities of knowledge that you have, but I'm very grateful for it. I think you should be given UNESCO status.
I've got a sponge, but I've got a photographic memory for chemical formula. And so for organic formula, so tell me, I mean, I can tell you the Haworth formula that I learned when I was 15. I can draw it out for you. But don't ask me left from right. I am very bad for finding directions. I am hopeless for directions. So I got one thing with one hand, something else with something else.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, what can I say? Thank you, Diana Beresford-Kroeger, for your vision and your wisdom and sharing the knowledge with us today. I urge you all to go on and watch Call of the Forest. Get a hold of a book, Our Green Heart, and you've got 8 other books, I believe,
Yes.
all of which are well worth reading. And I promise you, I can speak for myself here, you will never look at a tree the same way again.
Yeah.
You will never look at a tree the same way again.
Yeah. I'm honored, Mary. I'm honored because you and I shared the same concept of an buile, the sacred trees in Gaelic, Ausgaelga. And they were sacred trees in Ireland, but they were all medicinal trees. And I've just been involved with planting in a maze of all these trees in Ireland.
So thank you. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. There was over 500 of you, so I'm extremely grateful for that. And thank you, Diana, for making the time in your busy life, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you. I'm honored to speak to you.
And what would that be in Irish? What would that be?
Oh, big deal agus go meid tú meo agus go nairi tú.
Sláinte.
Sláinte go bio agus go nairi tú.
And goodbye to everybody else who's watching.
Yes.
Thank you.